We are coming to the, oh, I lost again. Thank you. We're coming to the final budget vote of a very long budget season. Well, it may not be the final, but let's hope it is, of a long budget season tonight. So I wanted to thank the committee and the administration and everyone who has put so much significant time into this budget process, starting all the way back in October, really, and moving through the last 5 months to getting to this point where we have a final budget in front of us. I wanted to acknowledge some of the great things that are going on in the district. I know a lot of this has come out on social media, but I just wanted to acknowledge it here as well. Thank you. 8th grader Riley Matheson won 2 golds in figure skating at the Bay State Games, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment. The ice hockey teams made it to the North semifinals. Abby Densmore had an essay published in Elan, which is the La Société Honoraire de Français publication, and she also got a $1,000 travel award, which is impressive. I had the pleasure of watching over this weekend on Sunday the Triton production of Spamalot, which I have to say from ages 6, because I had my youngest with me, all the way up to my husband, who I think would appreciate me not saying his age on a videotaped public meeting. We all enjoyed it, and I was so excited to come here tonight and realize that Patsy, my kids, well, actually the entire family's favorite character in the show is actually doing our recording back there tonight. So thank you. Well done. Olivia Valley, who's our school student rep to the school committee, was also one of the stars in the show. They all did a terrific job. We laughed through the whole thing. And my kids, every night before bed, I now put them to bed, and I can still hear them upstairs humming Always Look on the Right Side, yes. Yep, even though they've never seen any of that before. So that was terrific. Newbury Elementary is doing food recovery with Nourishing North Shore for the Newbury Food Pantry, where they're actually recovering some of the unused, uneaten food from the meals there and bringing them to the food pantry, which is terrific. Where are we at? Okay, yeah, so those are the accomplishments. Maureen has been working on the communications for the Jeff Perotti meeting on April 2nd. It's gone out to local districts. It's gone out to a lot of our, it's gone out to all of our legislators with an invitation for them to come. It's gone out to police departments. It's gone out to youth organizations. So hopefully we'll have a good night for that. And I'd like to thank Maureen for her work on that, ongoing work on that. Since we didn't really have a place for this elsewhere in the meeting, I'm also going to just note that there was an invitation from the Salisbury Warrant Advisory Committee for Brian and the Salisbury members of the school committee to go and just have a discussion with the Salisbury Warrant Advisory Committee on March 21st. And I'm also going to note that Brian, Michelle, and I are meeting with Senator DiZoglio and Representative Kelcourse on the 25th. I think we had mentioned that before, but that's been moved. And I'll go back and just note one more thing, because it was pretty amazing to watch. There was a Triton alum, John Boyle, who won the NCAA Division III 184 weight championship. Amazing, the athletics from that. So way to go, John. Yeah?
That was impressive. Just to correct one thing, the meeting with the Salisbury Warrant Advisory Committee is Wednesday the 27th.
Oh, 27th, sorry.
At 7 p.m.
That's probably because I can't read my own writing. Okay, I will open it to communications from the public. Any takers? All right. We are moving on to Student of the Month then. So this was a process that has been talked about for a long time, being able to honor a student from the district at each of our monthly meetings, our monthly business meetings. It's finally gotten kicked off. Linda has kind of spearheaded making sure that this got going, and Brian has done a lot of the legwork on it, so thank you for you two. I have to say, having looked through the list of nominees, what an incredibly difficult decision. But that decision was made. The nominator for the awardee was Megan Ober. So I know Megan has prepared a statement on her nominee. So I'll ask you if you could to come up and read it. You can either use the mic or grab the chair if you'd prefer.
I can take this out though, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
A little high for me. Thank you all for having me. Bear with me as I read this. I'm not very good at off the cuff, so reading is better for me. So when I received the request for the Student of the Month nominations, one of the first students who popped into my head was Alice Thornton, who's seated back there. While I'm not Alice's guidance counselor, I've observed all the ways that this mature and thoughtful young woman contributes to our school and her community. Alice is in the top 10% of her class academically. She's a member of NHS, women's choir, the swim team. She works part-time at a senior living facility and has been a Girl Scout since 2nd grade, a role that requires true commitment and dedication to community service. And while all these things are notable in their own right, it is Alice's character that stands out. Alice is the definition of a quiet leader. She's not boisterous or loud, but rather does all those small things that can create ripple effects around her. She's exceedingly polite and consistently asks staff members how they are doing or thanks them for the big and small things. Our office is in the midst of processing the hundreds of scholarship applications that we manage, and Alice stopped to thank our administrative assistant for all that she was doing on behalf of her and her classmates. And I mean like a genuine thanks, not just, hey, thanks, like genuine thank you. On the day that I nominated her, Alice had alerted me to a struggling peer that was in need of support. Alice did this discreetly and then stopped by my office later that day to make sure the other student was okay. These are the small acts of kindness that define who Alice is. I reached out to Alice's teachers for some additional anecdotes, and the same message came across. Alice has a quiet but impressive confidence, an exceptional level of maturity, will challenge herself without being asked, and is consistently the first person to offer to help her peers with material. One of her teachers reported that Alice gave one of the best researched, best organized, and balanced presentations on a technical topic that he had ever seen given by a high school student. Within seconds, Alice had her especially energetic class completely focused on her and her work, and the teacher noted it was the quietest this crowd had been all year. At the end of the presentation, her effort was rewarded with most genuine and enthusiastic applause. Unfortunately, Alice's maturity may be due in part to the challenges she has faced. When Alice was a freshman, her mother died suddenly of a heart attack. This tragedy forever changed and shaped Alice, but it motivated her as well. Alice notes that her goal is to go to college and become a research scientist within the biomedical field so that she can help people live healthier and happier lives. In a recent scholarship essay I snooped through, Alice wrote the following: "Having a positive impact is something that can be achieved easily. May that be through helping your friend out after a long day or smiling at a stranger on the street. I hope to be able to leave a sustainable impact where people will be able to gain something from my work or my kindness. Perhaps it is naive, but I truly hope that people can live a happier life due to my work. I hope to put in more kindness to the world than the world will ever give back. This is a lesson that someone dear to me has left with me." I mean, wow, like what a heart this girl has. Alice lives with her aunt and uncle, who are here tonight. We thank them for being here. In an email conversation with her aunt, also named Alice, she relayed to me that in Alice's sophomore year, her uncle, Bob, who's here, had a minor stroke that caused some speech issues. Nothing that could not be overcome with rehab. Part of his rehab was to read out loud every day to retrain his brain. Alice would come home after school and have her uncle read to her from one of her school books, mostly history. This way both of them could benefit from the exercise. I love this story because it really shows who Alice is. She is bright and resourceful, but compassionate and kind to her core. It is because of this character and noble purpose that I nominated Alice for our first Student of the Month. We should truly be proud to call her one of our own. So thank you, Alice.
I was gonna say, let me take the card. Yep, the whole committee's gonna get in the picture.
Oh.
Let's do over here.
Let's do, yeah?
Oh, just like at home.
Tina got backups. Awesome.
Do you want to have the rest of the committee come in? And then we should do one with.
Yes.
I was just gonna say, we'll have some with their aunt and uncle. You wanna do everybody? Let's see if we can fit everybody.
Sure, people in front.
You're good, you're good. Sideways.
If they don't come out well, we can blame them.
I know, the pressure's on.
Thank you.
Hopefully. Really nervous.
See, I wouldn't have volunteered. It's too much pressure.
It's a lot of pressure.
So you get hecklers.
Could be my first and last time ever.
I'm not sure how much of that was able to be caught on streaming video, but needless to say, I think we set the bar very high.
Yes.
Or I should say Alice set the bar very high for future decisions.
Did.
So,
She absolutely did.
absolutely.
So, so that said, we're still in kind of the lessons learned. I know we've gotten some feedback on this. We're hoping that we'll get some additional nominations. We're going to take the nominations that we have now and actually roll them into the next phase as well, so that they continue to gather over time. And we'll have 2 more, I believe, before the end of the year. Yeah? Did you have
I'm going to try and do 3 more. I'm
3
going to try and
more.
do April,
Sorry.
May, and June.
Oh, yes.
So just to confirm the process, so this isn't, thank you. Because this has to be, it's confidential information when there's a nominee. So it's myself, Narissa, and then we decided, I think it was going to rotate through each of the 3 members of the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee. So there's 2 committee members and myself making a determination each month. Because I think that list, someone who was nominated previously isn't automatically unqualified. So unfortunately, this decision is going to get harder and harder every month. But just to make sure that we're clear in the process, that there's no quorum of any group deciding and meeting to decide and make these decisions, because that would be an OML concern.
Yes.
But can I just say that was an awesome way to start this process? So
It was. What an amazing nominee to
Yes.
be able to have in front
Amazing
of us
young
for our
lady.
first time. So, and I'm glad we decided that Megan would have to read that, because I would never have
I
made
would
it
not
through,
have made it through that. Nope.
reading that.
No.
No. All right. Moving on, we are on the consent agenda. I will read aloud the donations. There was an iReady purchase valued at $177 for the Salisbury Elementary School Grade 1 team to implement iReady assessment donated by the Salisbury PTA. A check in the amount of $500 from the Prince Fund, care of Diane Hawkins Clark, to be used for food-related needs, including school lunches, snacks, etc., for Salisbury Elementary students as the Salisbury Elementary School principal sees fit. And books authored and illustrated by R.W. Alley and Martin Kelly, valued at $251.05, purchased by the Salisbury PTA to be used in conjunction and preparation of author visits at Salisbury Elementary School. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll approve. I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? All right, we have unanimous approval of that. Am I assuming we do not have a student advisory
So-
tonight?
So we, as you mentioned the student earlier, I literally looked at Patty and we had sent the request and we didn't receive a report. Obviously, Olivia Valley was very busy,
Yes.
as has the student council been, but we do not have a student council report tonight. My apologies. There's been a few things going on.
Yes.
So,
Okay. All right, moving on to new business. Any? All right. Seeing none, we're moving on to reports and deliberations. The notes from the District Communications Committee meeting on February 28th are in your packet. It was a relatively quiet meeting. We had a comparatively small group compared to what we usually have. So the notes are in there. I don't know if there was any questions or discussion on that. I think a lot of what we heard was kind of an extension of January 31st for those of you who had been to that one. All right. Moving on to the MASC Regional Schools Committee report. Dina? Oh, yes, sorry. Forgot I stole yours.
That's okay. Thank you. We had a busy February meeting. We're looking to develop specific training for regional school members. A survey went out to 103 people. I should backtrack. We have over 1,000 people, school committee members, that MASC gave me their names and emails, and I have culled that down to 103 members who actively want to know what our committee is doing. So we developed a survey in February, at our February meeting, asking what items in particular or what areas of interest our members would be interested in receiving additional training above and beyond what's given at Charting the Course. We feel like Charting the Course is good basic knowledge, but as we all know, regions are a different animal from a municipality. So our next meeting is March 28th, and we'll be reviewing those survey results then. The other thing we were talking about is Day on the Hill is May 1st. We are making magnets in the past. I'm sure, well, those of you who have been on committee for a while saw those yellow buses made out of cardboard that we had given to all the legislators. And oh yeah, we've been riding that bus for a long time.
riding that bus, no pun intended, yes.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, we now have upgraded to magnets. I haven't seen them yet. I will see them
Still a
next.
yellow school bus, though.
Still a yellow bus, and it says "Keep the Promise" on the side. So we're gonna make sure that we get those into everybody's hands. We are watching two bills that have been our subcommittee or our committee has identified as priorities for us. One is the Foundation Budget Commission. The other is the Regional Bonus Aid. Of course, we will be watching anything that has to do with regional transportation as well. So like I said, our next meeting is the 28th, and I'll have more information in April.
All right. Any questions for Dina?
I would just be careful with that, keep the promise. They might be thinking it's Keep the Promise Act.
That's true.
Promise keepers.
Oy. Keep the original promise.
Yeah, right.
Any other questions or comments for Dina? All right. Moving on to the monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
Thank you. So you have some agenda or calendar items that are a bit outside the norm listed there. As far as the community engagement, I want to keep updating you on the work that Julie Romano has been doing. I think it's safe to say, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, it is hard to keep up with her. But this was an investment. I'm going to keep reiterating. This was an investment we made. Her position is funded, obviously, very part-time, and it's out of Kids Club, supported by Kids Club. That's a tuition-based program that is extra. It's outside the core business of what we do, and this is directly supporting the community or engaging the community and supporting the entire district. So just a few little snippets here. Project Warm over at Salisbury Elementary, where they made blankets, 30 blankets, I believe was the total number, right? Or I'm sorry, there were 30 students involved in making 10 beautiful fleece blankets for students who were in need. At Salisbury Elementary, we have the Pen Pals program going now. It has been happening at Pine Grove for many years. Mr. Collier has been the pen pal guy in the 5th grade at Pine Grove for, I think it's safely to say, decades now. So we've been trying to expand that. Salisbury Council on Aging was ready to engage with some seniors. Newbury, we're still working on enough so that we can work with a full class. So that started in the 5th grade at Salisbury Elementary. Thank you to Tony Marie Evans for participating in that. We have a our teacher-student mentor program, and again, these are all activities, efforts that are coming out of the deficits that were identified with the 40 asset survey. So that is something that we're going to continue to complete each year, and it's important data on how we're engaging with our youth. So that they're engaging with their community, because we know that we are most successful when we're supported in community with a lowercase c. The Snow Angels project, I know that has been very successful. We haven't had much of a snowy winter until February. Snow Angels has been a little more active for the month of March, but I know that has been incredibly well received, and that quote there I included literally the senior saying, "I feel like I hit the lottery." We go out and shovel our driveway and don't think about how much work it is for a senior to do that. But also the piece I included here, I'm just going to read it. We also heard from one volunteer whose physical act of service by shoveling turned into an opportunity to help a senior by being there for him as he expressed his grief over losing his sister the week before. This is an amazing and poignant reminder about the impacts of service on both the giver and receiver, both tangible and intangible, and reinforces the importance of our focus on service to others. So we have a lot of, we have a lot of work to do in becoming a service-minded or service-oriented society. And so I think it's we're continuing to have the discussion about adding community service as a graduation requirement. But I think beyond a check-the-box requirement, because there's also spoken to a lot of students who have a concern about as soon as it becomes a requirement, it loses the meaning. So also the high school student council is doing the Triton Day of Giving or Day of Service. So it's this Friday afternoon and then all day Saturday, doing some painting and sprucing the school up projects. So I think it's a really, we talk about Snow Angels and it's clearly a service to the senior, but we can't miss out on the other impacts that just the act of service provides for everyone who is even near the Service Act. There is actually a middle school parent group that's starting that hoping emerges into a middle school, high school PTA. This has been something 5-6 years now. Been trying to, some of you have been involved in the past, trying to keep going or get going again. So that has been positive. And then there is the Essex County Asset Builder Network, so ECAB network Tina Lose has been here. There is a summit, if you will, that students from all the area schools meet at Northern Essex Community College. And so we do have Liz Finn, who's a high school guidance counselor, and Jamie Salvatore, the middle school counselor, has gone with students to participate in those regional discussions. So again, there's tremendous impact for one individual, and so she has also made a lot of connections with the ECAB network, and so I feel like we've only yet begun to see the impact, so I'm going to keep updating you on the ways that we're engaging with our community, because that's important. By way of update for school choice that I reported to you last month, I have, as I shared with you last month, I sent a letter directly to all families who had a student in the district last year. There were 19 of those. I've had several conversations, a few in-person meetings. A lot of those, the purpose for those folks choicing out, they're all very, very specific. There aren't many with global, but they're speaking to some global concerns. So there was learning that I took away in regards to issues that we can work on. And over time, I'll make that more public information, but this tends to be more very specific concerns, whether it's individuals or situations that occurred. But as I've had these discussions, there is a sense of concern about funding at the district level. And so my final statement there, reflecting on these discussions and the decisions being made by families, I'm further convinced that at the bare minimum, we need to maintain our current level of services for our students at all costs. It's always a fine balance. We've had this discussion over the past weeks and months about making the statement, we need more, but also balancing that with the statement of the product we're providing for our students is a high quality education. But there is a concern. There is a concern, and that's a real concern that we have to react to. And so, for budget purposes, where we are now has to be the floor as far as what we're providing for services. Quick update on the website. We continue to move forward, moving towards a content management system. The idea is to replicate the existing site in a much more fluid and efficient site that actually is very responsive. And we're also looking at our Blackboard communication system that we use now, updating a system that works with that new site that I think would be, we know it's more cost effective. The question is it as good a system as Blackboard Connect? We have now implemented texting. So if those of you who submitted to receive texts, we're sending out, the last message I sent out 1,297 texts or so. That's staff and families. So folks are getting a text as well as an email, and I can say, check your email. So those are good improvements. Again, just trying to do everything we can to reach parents in any way we possibly can. ALICE update. We are moving ahead. All of our the middle school, high school campus has completed all 3 of their trainings. The 3rd training was scheduled for the snow day last week for the 3 elementaries. That has been rescheduled to either the last week of March or the first week of April. That is the counter. So we've trained in the various components. Counter is by far the most anxiety producing. So the final drill is an exercise with counter, as well as the first, we'll call it a dynamic exercise, where folks had to make a determination. They heard a sound, they had to react, and had to determine whether they were going to evacuate, counter, or any of the various strategies to be used. So those will be done, those will be completed at the elementaries before April 9th. On April 9th, we will have our parent and community forum. Hoping we're going to keep, I pushed out an email and a text, and we're going to put out phone calls as we get closer. A few call or emails back from parents concerned just about what our process will be. The focus of this evening will be all the police chiefs, principals, all of our ALICE trainers will be there. Give a brief overview of the ALICE protocol and our response. And then really the bulk of the time is going to be set aside for questions, because we know that is going to be where parents' minds are is what if this, what if that. And to be fair, we were saying this the other day in a meeting, teachers are still there. Until you've had an opportunity to practice this and have it become muscle memory like a fire drill is now for all of us. You hear it, you're up. We clear this building in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Everyone's outside. We'll get there with this active shooter response. Right now, it's still fairly anxiety producing. So the focus will be overview, spend a lot of time answering questions. Chiefs, you name it, officers, principals, trainers will be present to do that. And then we're going to be distributing it. It's called an emergency operations plan. So the ALICE EOP is unique in that all of our other emergency planning, while they exist in binders on our shelves, and it's tabbed for different responses, an active shooter requires a little bit more public information. So as far as roles and responsibilities for students, for staff, reunification, so where we'll call them rally points, which is where, in the case of an evacuation, it's a very different evacuation than a fire drill. Multiple, or a point on campus or near campus where that is the rally point where everyone's supposed to go to, and then a reunification for parents. And so it's that will be distributed after the parent information night to make sure that there's some explanation on this document before it just starts floating out there. And then between April 9th and the end of the school year, we'll be working with students in an age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate way, working on these concepts Obviously, that's a very different discussion in a kindergarten classroom than it is at the high school, helping them understand the concepts. And then we will have an active drill before the end of the school year. It will not be a dynamic drill. We all agreed with police chiefs and everyone that dynamic drills are drills where people are making choices, where this year the focus would be on the walkthrough, the evacuation, the responses to physically walk through, but more than a tabletop exercise, if you will, but not quite yet to the dynamics phase. So we'll certainly, this is not going to be a secret. There's no, there are some that believe that training by inducing the anxiety is how you train best. I don't think any of the police chiefs believe that it's about a slow and steady ramp up to just build that comfortable muscle memory is where we need to be. So that's the plan through the balance of this year, and then by next year, we would begin adding these drills as a normal part of our repertoire. So questions on that? I assume there are some.
I have a quick question. On the 9th, is the new high school principal, Patrick Kelly, going to be able to attend?
I was just emailing with him. I believe he's going to be there, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
I just think it would be important for him to be there.
Yes. He was absolutely hoping he could be there.
Yeah.
That would be the first opportunity as an entire community for him to be part of a discussion. Yes. So one last thing that as far as there are lots of, just so that you're aware, there are those that drink the Alice Kool-Aid, which is you can become Alice certified, and there are some who believe that putting that badge is something we need to do. We're not full drinkers of the Kool-Aid. We believe in the response and the protocol, and we're training towards that. We will not likely become an Alice certified district because there are many hoops that you have to jump through that I don't believe are necessary. We're going to follow the protocol. We believe the protocol is good, but there are, to teach students, there are books you can buy. Actually, I'll say it here because we got permission. Newburyport created a social story that is absolutely brilliant that we're going to adapt for our elementary schools. And it's basically just kind of goes through, I don't know if you had experience with it, probably not at the high school level, it's a little younger, but just with pictures, so younger kids can see pictures of people they know in certain parts of the building. So when we say, at this point in the building, you're looking at a picture of your specific building, if you're at Pine Grove, if you're at Salisbury, and so on and so forth. So it's a work in progress, but as the chiefs, we all met the other day, and I'm pleased with the progress. I feel like everyone is taking it seriously, and I should say significant thanks to all of our 425 employees, because as anxiety producing as this is for parents and for students, it is as equally, if not perhaps more so, for educators and teachers, who are the people who take very seriously their job of walking into these buildings and being responsible for students. So when we're training for something where we've drilled into teachers' minds that you're responsible for your 23 students, so you have your folder, you go out and do your drill. If you don't have all your students, it's red. If you do, it's green. To changing from that to a response where it's about minimizing the loss of lives, that's a very different and very difficult thing for anyone to comprehend and to wrap their head around, but specifically teachers and educators and all of the folks within the district who they again, as I said earlier, they really take their job seriously about the protection of all of our students. So it's a work in progress. I'm really pleased with the progress where we are, and I anticipate that after the April 9th, we'll be able to kind of take a next step forward in working with students and be in a very good place by the end of the year.
Can I ask one quick question? On the 9th, are we going to have, I anticipate there's going to be a lot of questions about the potential mental health repercussions of this. Are we going to have people there in addition to the police officers that could answer questions about that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And I just want to say how horrible it is that we have to do this.
Unequivocally. And if I saw the news today, I believe it was in Brazil. It was, in Rio. So it's, unfortunately, it's something that we can't not prepare for anymore. So, and I think, and I guess, I think if we had done this 3 years ago, 2 years ago, the response would have been very different from parents, in that it would have been, it wasn't as real. Whereas now, I believe, at least from my experience and what I've heard, is that people are begging for this. Faculty and staff have just been waiting for this training because it just gives them information. People need information to know what to do. And the key delineator here is you're thinking on your feet. That's just empowering people to say that's your job, is to make the best decision in the best interest of the students and yourself, that whatever the situation is that you find yourself in, because we can't predict it. So just that information is empowering for folks. But it is incredibly unfortunate that we're here. Moving on, so we'll get to this as an action item to approve the calendar, but we had reported to you last month that we were going to do just to do a quick survey, and it was a very quick survey, so certainly the idea is surveys that have 1 or 2 questions get the most responses. You will have read the paper today and learned that Newburyport just decided to move to Wednesday. They only do 2, so it's 2 days, and they're moving to 2-hour delayed start. So we're talking about 8 PD days, so it's certainly a greater impact. But we asked 2 basic questions to parents, faculty, and staff, and just basically said, do you prefer Fridays or Wednesdays? And do you prefer traditional or trying something new with a delayed start? So you can see here, it was overwhelmingly Friday over Wednesday, and it was fairly overwhelmingly decision to stay with the normal start time with an early release rather than a late start. So at this point, our recommendation, or my recommendation, is that we approve the calendar, which is, again, in the action item, which follows the same pattern as previous years, where PD is mostly on Fridays, and it is an afternoon early release. As I stated here, I will say we're going to keep this under review, because as time goes on, I think it's worth continuing to have the discussion, because I think there are more benefits than people realize, and I think if parents is actually, for example, for daycare, on a half day, it's roughly 3.5 hours of daycare. We would be talking about a 2.5-hour late start, so it's actually 1 less hour of daycare if that was where you found yourself. On an early release day, students are on their own for lunch. In the proposal where we would come in late, we would still have them in by lunchtime, so they're having lunch at school. So I think there are a lot of benefits that the goal wasn't to tease out a massive proposal this year, but just to get, this is certainly a very solid starting point. I think we have a very clear response here. So the recommendation would be to keep it as is and add the half PD days on Friday afternoons to the calendar that you tentatively approved in February. NEASC update. I won't go through the detail there. I will say Patrick Kelly is getting involved in that process. He was here all day yesterday, meeting with program coordinators. I'm in communication with his superintendent to make sure that we're on good terms, that he doesn't feel like we're poaching him. But he has been, Brett Jackson has been very responsive and helpful in saying, we need to get him set up so that as of July 1st, he comes in able to hit the ground running. So it's a very positive process. Faculty committees are meeting in steering committees, providing standards reports. That will be collectively produced as an entire response by the end of this year, or very first of next year, if possible, or if not the end of this year. That then becomes the basis for what's called a collaborative conference. The collaborative conference is the first time NEASC officials come on campus and meet with our faculty and staff and leadership, and decide from that visit what the goals and strategies are that they want to come back and see improved in 2 years. So then in 2 years, in 2021, would be what we dubbed as the formal NEASC visit. Currently on paper right now, it's fall of 19 and fall of 21. It's a very reasonable chance that it's going to be spring of 20 and spring of 22. We're not losing accreditation. There's no issue with the delay. For me, the value is in having Patrick come in, get completely up to speed so that he can legitimately lead this NEASC process rather than being brought up to speed during the process and while it's happening. So either way, I believe we're in a very good place. The State Commission that was named to last year and then didn't hear anything from anyone. Now I have 722 emails over the last week and a half. So we are meeting on this Friday afternoon at the State House. They are public meetings. I do have an agenda, which is the first meeting is an overview, kind of history of state transportation. Jay Sullivan will be there to provide that overview. And I know there is a 30-minute public comment period. So whether or not I get into debates with Jay, that will remain to be seen. But we'll start on a good note. So that's the, just so that you're aware, you know, I've been talking about this for a while, but it is actually happening. And I was on a conference call with Senator Tarr, planning for a different session on this Friday, and he is very hopeful that something will come of this commission. He believes it has some weight, so I will put my trust in that. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Questions? All right. Moving on to the 2019-2020 school year calendar approval. The administration's recommendation was to approve this as is based on the results of the survey. I have a motion to approve the school year calendar for 2019-2020 as presented, please.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded.
Oh, go ahead.
Take discussion.
I was going to say any discussion. Yeah.
I think Maureen has a question.
Do you put the graduation date in June? Triton graduation?
Yeah, so it will, we always, we wait to see how certain things fall, but it will almost always be the 6th. In this calendar, it would be on the 6th.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we will confirm that later on, but yes, hopefully things don't fluctuate, but sometimes they do. Yes, it's always the first, it's generally the first Saturday in June. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
So can I just say the one change, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, the one change, this literally mimics the current year into the new 2019-2020 physical calendar. The one switch was in January, the PD day, the half PD day, is bumped up against the Martin Luther King weekend rather than the weekend prior. So we come back on the 2nd, so there's a short two-day week, then it would have been a short 4-day week with the day on the 10th, and then a full week. So we bumped it up again, so we come back 2nd and 3rd, have a full week, have a 4-day week, and then another 4-day weekend. So we just felt like that worked better for everyone involved. That was it.
Any
Jump in.
any further discussion? All in favor? All right, we have a unanimous approval. And moving on to the fiscal year 20 final operating budget. You received an electronic copy of this via email and have a paper copy here. I know we've had extensive discussion of this over the past 5 months that have resulted in the document that is in front of us today. So I'm going to ask for, oh wait, this is when I have to have Maureen read the actual things, right?
I think you want us to give a, do you want us to talk about it first?
Well, I was going to get to a motion through the motions to approve. Why don't we talk first and then
Usually
we'll
we
go
present
straight.
first and
Yes,
then-
yeah, because we have specific motions on this. That makes sense. Okay. Go for it.
All right. So before I hand this over to Michelle to have her go through the detail, and specifically, unless you would like her to, the focus will be on what's changed since the tentative budget. But I just wanted to point out in the narrative, tried to paint a picture this year, tried to tie it in a little more to the district strategy, starting on page 1, outlining the fact that all the decisions that we make are being made because we've set certain priorities. Obviously, this year, we had a hard time making any progress towards any improvements in the strategy, but I did want to note some of the successes we've seen over the last year. In spite of this year we ended up cutting 24 personnel, but significant improvements with community engagement. We produced our first ever district annual report, postcards mailed, and I do have pricing, and it was a lot less. It's for under $11,000, we could mail that full 20-page report and have it in every mailbox across the entire district, residential, commercial, otherwise. So now my mission between now and the end of the summer is to find a donor and a sponsor who would be willing to sponsor with space on the back of the cover so that we can achieve that report in every single mailbox for zero cost to the district. We've developed homework guidelines and are in the process of making sure those are being enforced. We have a middle school, high school aligned schedule, significant upgrades in our district safety, curriculum improvements, continued implementation of math, renewed focus on science and trying to be innovative with maker spaces and robotics and coding, and have implemented some wellness, giving a nod to where we're trying. There is still a need for a comprehensive curriculum, but that's a work in progress. And we're continuing our special education review. That is, we were hoping for that by the end of February. We are now scheduled to meet next Wednesday, Thursday? Is that right? And we'll have that report in hand, and we'll be able to subsequently, by the end of this year, report out to you that report as well as our follow-up plan. And then I just provided a little bit of budget background. I think it's important, so similar information to what was included in the district proposal, providing some context of a lot of the recent reductions, and the reason for those reductions being that we've continually had certain costs increase, specifically special education and healthcare, and our budget hasn't gone down with the enrollment. I didn't do a full-blown explanation, but just a brief on page 6, just some brief, again, reiterating the reason why when we have reduced enrollment, we don't automatically have reduced staffing. That being said, we have reduced close to 60 class teachers. For next year's budget, due to attrition, we're down 1 teacher at Newbury. We'll be at 60 less classroom teachers than we were at 18 years ago. So we have lost classroom teachers to adjust to the declining overall student population, but during that same period, we've added almost as many supports through instructional assistants, clinical social workers, clinical supports, ABA services, special education teachers, reading specialists, math specialists, all of the programming that allows for us to meet the needs of all of our students. By the same time, we've also continued to support programs like AP, which consistently have lower class numbers because it's a smaller population who needs that and is interested in those courses, but it's an opportunity that these students need to have. So that is the reasoning for, and then the following pages on page 7 outline the cuts that we've made with instructional technology specialists, reading and math specialists, instructional assistants, the district office positions that have been cut over the years, the health coordinator, part-time early childhood coordinator, special programs coordinator, and a half-time payroll clerk that have all been cut over the past 5-6 years. Instrumental programming at the elementary level has been reduced. Foreign language instruction used to be at the elementary level, then it was just the middle school. We've trimmed from 4 teachers to 3 teachers, now to 2 teachers, and we are holding it in the middle school, but that has diminished and is not where it needs to be. Late buses on all campuses, again, in this budget, it does increase, or it does restore late buses 2 days per week for just this campus. We cut custodians, half-time custodian at each campus last year. That continues to be a challenge to make sure our buildings are as clean as they were or should be. We've never established tuition-free full-day kindergarten. The western part of the state is 100%. Eastern Mass is less, and all of us in the little old Northeast is the last bastion of folks holding on to tuitioned full-day kindergarten. So while our tuition has stayed the same for probably close to 10 years now at $29.50, and it is less than others, we still do continue to charge for full-day K when many others are shifting away from that. And then student fees. I know I bring this up every year. Whether it be parking fees or athletic fees, we're talking about close to $300,000. We would have to $325,000 if we were to reduce and remove all fees. But I still go back to, and while that's not unique to Triton, again, this is not a Triton alone story. This is Massachusetts. It's not the free and appropriate public education that you and I all grew up with. So So the next page, it just moves on to the focus at the state level of the work being done and the need to pay attention. And then on page 10 and 11, same data, trying to present it a new way. Maybe if it looks a little different, it'll catch someone else's eye. But now this shows fiscal 2002 through fiscal 2020, and where in 2002, the towns were responsible for 60% of our total operating expenditures. The towns are now responsible for 77% of our total operating expenditures, or 76.7, I should say, percent in fiscal 20. That was actually under 60% at 59.8% in 2002. Whereas the state's contribution, they were paying 34% in 02. They're now approaching 1/5 or 20.6% of our total operating revenue. So that's the story. All the previous pages talk about the impact and the net impact on the district. In that impact, if you go to different school districts, that will vary. Decisions that were made will vary. The funding impacts will vary. But the story is the same story. Doing more with less and more and more and more shifted to the towns to support. And we're doing our best to work with the towns, and the reality is the towns, the cry of the towns is valid. They can't support this. And the reality is we need to work together with our towns just to be on the same page and with a single voice and fight with the state to make sure that changes are made this year. So with that being said, is there anything else? Nope. I'm going to turn that over to Michelle to talk specifics.
Okay. Most of the budget, 99% of the budget, is the same as it was voted and approved at the preliminary stage. But the final budget before you today, there are 3 changes that are detailed on page 13. It's the last 3 lines on that sheet, number 27, 28, and 29. We did have small reductions. So we had a reduction in our Essex Regional Retirement Assessment of $11,187. The Retirement Board sends out updated assessments in late February, early March, and that is what was decreased. The data phone service line has decreased by $990 because we have removed the service for the payphone that is out front by the front door of the high school. We have found that this has not been used in a number of years, so we really do not see the need to maintain that service any longer. And finally, our dental insurance. We have received 2 quotes for dental insurance. Both of them represent a 0% increase in the rate. So this would decrease our appropriation by $18,487. So the total change for the operating budget from last year's FY19 budget to this year's, or the proposed FY20 budget, is an increase of $1,690,394. And that is the only change in this entire book besides the assessments, because the operating budget decreased, the assessments also decreased slightly. So this new figure with the operating budget at $42,476,705 results in operating assessments to Newbury in the amount of $9,386,779. Assessment to Rowley in the amount of $10,547,555, and an assessment to Salisbury in the amount of $12,648,939. Are there any questions? There certainly aren't many changes.
And if I could just say, if we were to back out, we keep talking about special ed costs being a major driver. If we were to back out the 2 lines of special education costs in this budget, our total increase in spending would be 2.5%.
Any questions for Michelle or Brian? Comment? Sorry, you need the mic.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I appreciate all the hard work that went into this budget. It has been a very hard year. Once again, I'm disappointed in what we have to vote on that's before us today. I do take issue with this being presented as that we're giving our students a highly, how did you phrase that, Brian? High quality education. I think it's a bare minimum education, and it breaks my heart to say that, because we don't have a wellness program that we've been talking about that we need for how many years now. We have textbooks that are still outdated. We have technology needs that aren't being met. It's disappointing, and I think that when I read this budget, and there's the part in there in your narrative, which I thought was very well done, by the way, it talks about, you know, us having to work with our towns and everything else, which we certainly do, and we have been doing that. But it doesn't just fall on school committee or town members or town leaders to raise the case at the State House. I mean, you alluded to it before, Brian, with the community service that we have our students doing now. Well, our community needs to support our schools. And that means not only school committee members, town officials, it means business owners, it means seniors, it means parents, it means people without students in the district. And because a poor school system is going to affect our whole community. And I was going to briefly ask Tina, I hate to put her on the spot, but as a realtor, you certainly know more than anybody sitting around this table the reality of that. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with I agree with everything that Dina's saying, and I do want to make a comment that I thought this was really well done, and I appreciate pages 10 and 11 as an illustration as to what we've been struggling with. And I do want to say, watching the meeting notes from the Finance Committee meeting that you and Narissa attended along with Paul, I think was really eye-opening in terms of you speaking to the piece of the community being involved. A lot of people still don't understand, and specifically with a real estate piece, I mean, I can't tell you how many families that I know that my kids go to school with now in preschool they haven't even entered into the district yet, that are already moving to Newburyport or to Masco, to Georgetown, to Ipswich, because of their lack of confidence in Triton. And it's unfortunate because they are good families that I think could have a positive impact if they were the type to get involved in the Triton community. So it's, I wish more people understood that, and I think you're right, Tina. People need to step up as a community and understand that, and if there's issues, not run away from it. That's what I'm trying to do with my involvement here. I do think that we have a great asset in Brian and Narissa and the rest of the committee, and I'm happy that that's been acknowledged by people that have been involved, townspeople like Bernie Cullen, who gave you guys a shout out on Rally Talks. I thought that was pretty significant, actually. So I think from what we learned last year, and our strategy this year, I think it has made a difference, and I think it will continue to make a difference. But unfortunately, it's going to take a long time, and we're going to see still a lot of people looking to move out because, I mean, people do believe, you know, what they see on social media. And like you said, from the school choice numbers, just the funding, people are concerned that their kids aren't going to get a quality education at Triton. And it's unfortunate because obviously we're trying to do more with less. And I think we have a lot of great assets here, but it is unfortunately the reality. But getting everyone to understand that, you know, especially the folks that can afford to move out or can afford to send their kids to private school, they'll always be fine. And then it's going to be all the families and the children that are left behind that can't afford to make those moves. So, yeah, it's tough. But you guys have been doing a great job. So I just wanted to say that too. It makes me proud. And honestly, when people not to keep talking because now I'm rambling. as a realtor, there's a very fine line in terms of what information, in my opinion, that I can give. If someone is moving to one of these 3 towns, when they ask me about the school system, I have to direct them to resources and that they can go look at the numbers themselves. But the response that I give if someone's like, well, what about Triton? Like, should I move to Raleigh? Should I move to Newbury? Or, you know, I don't know if I want to send my kids to Triton. I just say, you know, I'm part of the committee. I think we have great leadership, and that gives me all the confidence in the world to stay here and raise my kids and put them through the schools in this district. And that's what I tell them. So I'm hoping that even with the challenges that we're facing, I think the people in this community are our greatest assets. And I'm an eternal optimist. I think that things can get better even though we have some challenges ahead of us. And that's what I've been telling people. So, but can only do so much. But yeah, people are moving out.
I think it's really disappointing to hear you call it a bare minimum, because I have kids in the school district and they're in class every day. And if it was a bare minimum, they would not be in this district anymore. They have gotten a very, very good education here.
I'm not disputing that.
Sorry.
I'm not disputing that at all. My concern is moving forward. We're going backwards now in my point of view. I've been on this committee 14 years now, and I see a downward trend that just breaks my heart. It is not the teacher's fault. It's not. It's the reality of the state finances right now, and I recognize that, and we are working our tails off. I totally understand that. But I don't think that we're being honest if we're not looking at it and saying, we have a crisis here, and if we don't address it as a crisis, people are just going to think that, oh, things are going along all right. We've all seen before that unless you're talking about cutting sports or cutting the arts or AP or whatever somebody's passion is, we don't get people here. And that's unfortunate. I want to see people here because they're upset that we cannot provide our students with what they deserve. I'm not saying that we're not doing everything that we can within the resources. What I'm saying is we've got to recognize that that's not enough.
Any further discussion?
Just to be the diplomat and sort of the 2 viewpoints, I think Brian kind of positioned it well in saying before that we're trying to do as much as we can. People in the community absolutely need to step up and be accountable for their school system. I think that's an issue across the board in terms of people just not getting involved because they think people making the decisions are just going to take care of them, and then they turn around and they're like, wait, what's going on? But I think balancing that message of, yes, we're in crisis in terms of the budget and state funding, but there are people that are getting a great education. I mean, if it's not evidenced by the Student of the Month that we presented tonight, I mean, how impressive was that? So I do think that we are on a better track than we probably were before in highlighting those things. And I think that we have to stay positive with that in the back of our mind in terms of fighting.
I think, if I can just add to that, the biggest change that public schools find themselves in now, we find ourselves in now, is we have to market ourselves. You've always said we have to market Triton to Triton. We have to sell Triton to Triton. Now more than ever, parents have choices. And parents who can afford private can afford private. There's charters. There's, you know, TECA is the perfect example of an online academy that costs us an extra $3,700 per student, but that is $2,700. But that is open to parents to enroll their students without any involvement from us. So I don't see choice, smaller case C, choice and options coming off the table. So to your point, I think it is. It's a fine line. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. Are we at a crisis point? Absolutely. We need more money. But to Nerissa's point, I think that the quality of the programs, the quality of, you know, the magic that Kim has worked of as far as implementing and updating curricula, on a shoestring budget, and we have work to do. Absolutely, we can and will be better. But that's where I struggle with without being able to say confidently, and I can say confidently, amazing things are happening in the Triton schools. Yeah.
No argument
Yeah.
there. Again, I'm not arguing that. We are doing phenomenal with what we have, but I don't want people to think that that's okay. I want people to know that we need everybody, all hands on deck, to turn this ship around. And I think if we can get sponsors for the annual report, and the fact that it would go to businesses, that's what we need. We need our businesses, our business owners to see they've got skin in this game too. Education is vital, not just for property values and all of that. It is vital to our national economy, world economy, everything. And I just want to make sure that we are doing the best. We are doing the best that we can given the circumstances, but our students deserve better, and I continue to fight for that.
Paul?
Point, Dina, I see in this budget the slow trickle, the presentation here in the front, the narrative, the slow trickle of programming and services away. And then you look on page 11, and the towns are doing more, and our communities are doing more, and it is clearly we have an issue with the state funding. And I agree with what everyone else has said. I like the framing, because you're framing this in the way that it needs to be framed in order to try and get the communities engaged the way they need to be to start trying to bring some of these services back, or new services back, to replace some of the programming that has been lost.
Can I just say one more thing? I think another thing that I've been thinking about, and I didn't think it was appropriate this year based on sort of shifting our strategy after what we went through last year, but I think as we continue to increase communication and create better relationship with the towns and the finance committees, to Dina's point, I think we need to start pushing back on the towns and asking them what is their plan, because realistically, as much as we're fighting at the state level, if we don't get that money and that slow trickle, we're going to have to go back to the town and say, what's your plan for growth, and how important is the school system to you in terms of the value of having people here? And if they do deem that it is in fact important and understand that, which I feel like, again, in my limited time and experience in being involved on the school committee, watching the conversations, hearing the conversations at the recent conversations at the DCC, the conversations that were had at the finance committee meeting between Rowley and you guys, I really encourage you to watch that piece of it, because it's really eye-opening. I mean, a lot of the officials and the people that are involved in being the voice for the townspeople don't understand how the school budget works and don't understand the impact, beyond, we can talk about property values, and I obviously agree and believe that all day, but if someone's not in the market to sell their house right now, they don't care. It's not relevant to them. So, and if their kid's already gone through the school system, unfortunately, most people are like, been there, done that. And if they can afford to send their kid to private school, they're just going to complain, well, I still pay high taxes, and, and I don't even send my kids to Triton. And they don't understand that money that's not extra money that the school is getting. They don't understand those basic concepts, which is why I think we've gotten better at communicating that, and people are starting to understand, but it is going to be an uphill battle. And I think next year we need to start pushing back on the towns, because they've been, what is the school going to do? What is the school going to do? And now we need to ask the towns, like, how are they going to help us? What's their strategic plan for growth to help us make sure that we have quality schools? So I just want to kind of throw that out there and keep that in the back of our mind for next year, to start asking those questions.
Other questions or comments for Brian or Michelle? All right. Maureen's doing the honors.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 final operating budget in the amount of $42,476,705, with the assessments to Newbury in the amount of $9,386,779, to Rowley in the amount of $10,547,555, and to Salisbury in the amount of $12,648,939. Did I get that right? So many numbers.
Any discussion? All in favor? We didn't have a second, did we? Yeah, that was Deb, sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear. Vote, and capital, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2020 final capital budget in the amount of $1,636,094, with assessments to Newbury in the amount of $126,369, to Rowley in the amount of $141,951, and to Salisbury in the amount of $170,266.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Right.
So can I just say a few thank yous? So certainly, there are so many people that have involvement in this process to this point, with the principals and the school councils, start with discussions and priorities and goal setting, and then folks within our office, administrators, support staff, putting documents together, and certainly Michelle sitting to my right, who makes this look easy, and it's just a document that just appears, but hours and hours and hours of preparation and making sure that every dollar ties out and every digit ties out. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, and specifically Michelle for her work on this, I think, very high quality budget.
Thank you to you all. All right, moving on to subcommittee reports and action items. Linda, it looks like you're up first with policy and advocacy.
Okay, you guys have received the phone book of policies to review. And I know that Dina has Brian, do you want to go over this?
I can. Do you want me to take that, Dina? So Dina and I have had some discussion. Do you want to
Sorry, yes.
key up the...
In my reading of the policy manual, file GCBB, Employment of Principals, I had not seen before. I understand that it is a new policy. However, I asked Brian about it because it is not what we are currently doing. And even though it cites Mass General Law, he and I both had a hard time trying to figure out how it would apply. I don't know, Paul, if you read it and saw anything that you thought applied to it, but anyway, Brian has found a policy from Andover that reflects what our current process is, and I think it's a much better policy.
So if I can just explain, the piece that is in the existing policy as recommended by MASC has been adopted by a very few school committees, and then there are a lot of school committees who don't have the file at all. And then I think the file is good, but with a modification. And the basic modification is that the policy as recommended by MASC requires that contracts of principals be brought to the school committee for approval. But statute, that's not what statute says. Statute basically says that you set the parameters, which you do within, I actually don't think the statute even says that, but the good policy is you set the parameters, and you've done that through job descriptions. That outlines the qualifications, it outlines the expectations, it outlines the compensation and the benefits. So that's what the role of the school committee is. And then I then have to work within those confines to offer and hire a principal. So that's what this does. It basically, this is actually, I think Dina said it, this is Andover's, that basically took the MASC and tweaked it so that it still sets the authority appropriately with the school committee to set the parameters, guidelines, benefits, and compensation, but then the principal is hired by the superintendent. And as we've had these discussions, whether it's the 9 of you and me as superintendent, we want to make sure that the policies are set up so that when we're gone, that they're legal as a first point of discussion, but also set up for success.
Linda, I just wanted to tell you too that in reading this, there were 8 other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, 8 other policies that I'd like to be able to go through tonight, real briefly, at least to tell you what I found. Again, it's little things, it's verbiage that I thought should be considered changed just to reflect what we do.
Sorry, I'm just gonna grab this back. I was gonna ask, do you want to do that? Because I have a number 2. I was gonna send them to you separately for when we go on to the second reading. But do you want to go through them tonight, or do you want to kind of compile?
Well, I think we should look at those, probably bring it back to the policy and have us look at it, right?
I would say if there are points to bring up with the full committee, that's not a bad thing, or it can just be if it's more.
But I have no
efficient.
problem if you want to go through them.
Yeah. I don't have an issue. I mean, it certainly can go back to the policy subcommittee and kind of synthesize any of the edits.
So yes, you want to go through them tonight?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, hand it to Dina while I go grab my packet then.
Okay. The first one is policy ADB, drug-free schools. I thought it would be prudent to add visitors at the end of the line where it says, I don't have it right here, hang on one second. At the end of the second paragraph where we have these standards of conduct are equally applicable to students and employees, I think we should add visitors too, because I know in the past we've had issues at high school graduation, for example, where we've had people here on campus that didn't follow those rules. Yes, I didn't want to quite say that, but yes. No.
I didn't say a name.
So that's the first one. The second one is policy BDA, school, C as in boy. And it is school committee organizational meeting. Just replacing clerk with secretary because we use secretary, not clerk.
Okay, Brian.
We talked about that, and I believe statute uses the term clerk. And so we can call it whatever we want. The function is still the same. So we ended up leaving it, I mean, it wasn't my decision, but we ended up leaving because my understanding, if I have to go back and look, but if I remember correctly, which I'm almost positive on ADB that we added visitor. Which
I'm sure we did too.
When
I saw that, I'm thinking the same thing.
Which
That's another
whole discussion about
discussion.
the detail and follow-up and all that. Okay. But yeah, so that's the will of the committee. I mean, it could be either. We're talking definitely semantics, but I'm pretty sure the statute references clerk, and you could call it,
Well, I think it should be consistent. I mean, in the other descriptions of the roles, we call it secretary. So it just seems to me that it conflicts. As long as it's consistent, I don't care, but I think consistency is important. File DB under annual budget, it keeps talking about the district agreement. We always call it a regional agreement. Again, I don't know if there's anything. D as in Dina, B as in Brian. And instead of calling it a district agreement, it would be a regional agreement. The next one would be DB-R. Again, it's just regional instead of district. And then DBC, budget deadlines and schedules. Whatever dates are assigned, this is the third paragraph, whatever dates are assigned, the final date for the submission of the budget to the selectmen, I think should be changed to member towns because it's the towns that receive the budget. Or was there a reason why that's listed that way?
Again, I think that's statutory, that it's the towns, like they're the executive body. They're not the appropriating, they're the executive body, then they have to send it to the appropriating body.
But doesn't our regional agreement say 2-member towns? I don't believe it says selectmen.
This is this is law, so regardless, I mean, we send it to the same people, right? I mean,
Okay.
you can call it the town, but statutorily, it's the selectmen, and then they designate, right, they hire a treasurer and all the different, so.
Okay, I was not in on that conversation, so understood. Okay, employment of principals we covered.
So can we just go to that? So for GCBB, I mean, we can talk about it as a subcommittee, but is that generally, I think that's the most substantive change. Does that make sense to the rest of the committee?
Brian, I'm just unclear. Are we going to go with the Andover Public Schools version?
So that's what I was asking. So I'm hearing people say that yes, the Andover version makes more sense than the MASC version.
And so we're going to now be involved in the setting the compensation for the building heads?
No, you are, so you set,
Because I wouldn't get hung up in what they're saying state law is, because my belief, and I haven't looked at this recently, but it has more to do with the durations and the renewals as opposed to the compensation.
what has more to do with the duration?
The law. The law has to do with the renewals as opposed to the setting the compensation. I would be shocked if the law says that we are supposed to set the compensation for the building heads.
Right, speaks specifically to the superintendent hiring and appointing principals. So this specifically says, which I don't think is a bad thing, so this says the school committee shall approve appropriate parameters for compensation and benefits to be used.
But that's our job descriptions.
Exactly,
Exactly,
right.
and
So
hiring ranges.
so this is the Andover one you're looking at. So the other one basically said contracts have to come to the school committee, which then is different because if you're approving a contract, you're hiring, not the superintendent.
Okay. I would be more in favor of just leaving it the way it's been and having a policy that follows that.
But that's it.
never
Paul.
had the
We never
policy.
had this policy before.
Oh, well, then I would, this policy seems okay. I just, addressing the compensation by the school committee, I just don't think is appropriate. I think it's a slippery slope down micromanaging the superintendent's job.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying the Andover policy is the one that is reflective of what we are currently doing instead of what was proposed in this package.
Because this basically says you're setting parameters, which I would argue that's what a job description does. And I think that's good for you to set job descriptions, so I can't, my successor, can't go off and all of a sudden hire a principal and say, no, you're only going to get 2 days vacation, you're going to get a different benefit package, and by the way, I'm going to give you an extra $50,000. So I have to work within those parameters, so.
Does that make sense, Paul?
Sure.
The next file that I had marked was homebound instruction. It's file IHBF. The last line of the second paragraph, it refers to the Director of Pupil Services. Would that not be Assistant Superintendent? Isn't that part of Kim's role, or do we leave it like that? I know we haven't had a K through 8 or a 9 through 12 administrator in many years here.
Fact, we changed this. For a fact, I remember this discussion. Should be.
And the next one was the student dress code, file JICA. It just seems to me that there is not a lot of guidance here. It says something about JICA. It gives the responsibility for dress and appearance with the students and the parents. That's all fine, but it addresses here, where was that I saw? The administration is authorized, the last line of the second paragraph, the administration is authorized to take action in instances where individual dress does not meet the stated requirements. I don't see anything stated.
Well, what we're doing is a lot of the information is going to be in the handbooks.
So can we change that so it says as reflected in the, or written in the handbooks or something? Or is that not?
So the legal standard, because we will lose this every single day, the legal standard is you have the right to determine how the student will dress, providing the next portion of that statement, the attire is not destructive to school property, complies with requirements for health and safety, which is not, those are public, right? You can't hurt anybody, and does not cause disorder or disruption. Those are the 3 standards that we can basically say you need to change. We can say everything we want about 2 inches and spaghetti straps and no underwear.
That's not what I'm asking for. No, I'm
Right,
just
no,
saying,
no.
could we say something about here that, you know, guidelines will be in the handbooks or something, or do we not need that?
Well,
It
Dina,
just seems very vague.
when we were talking about cell phone policy and the dress code, we said this would be an ongoing conversation. I think we were going to wait till the new principal came on board and see what he wanted to put as part of what he would like to see in the student handbook. But this was going to be an ongoing conversation. We said we were going to leave it with the basic as MASC's version of it, and then we would make changes to the handbook.
Right, because every year you'll approve the handbook.
Right.
And that is policy. So when you take a vote, that sets policy. So personal opinion is, this is the legal threshold, the standard, and then if you want to make a change to the policy, that's done annually by approving the handbook.
And just,
Right now, the handbooks don't really comply with this because it's over-restrictive. But
and
that's a
just
work
to
in
say, other things that are in the policy aren't in the handbook for certain other policies that we have. We don't reference in our policy that
In the handbook.
it's in the handbook. Like the tobacco and drug and all that is not saying, we have a policy and then section this is in, well, we don't reference our policy in our handbook either.
Last one that I had a question about was student publications. Is this a new one as well?
What number is it?
I'm sorry, JICE. And the reason why I'm asking is in the last paragraph, there's a statement about that needs to be published in all student publications, which to my knowledge we've never done, and I kind of like that idea. That's why I'm asking if it's new. I have no issue with it, I'm just asking if it's new. And that's it. Thank you.
I would say I don't think it's new. That statement may be new. But this would be, you're saying this statement would be on the bottom of the Triton Voice.
Yep.
Right.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I believe that was one that Mike was reiterating had to be in the policy.
The other one, I would just say the other one we were working on is cell phone policy. And again, that was another one. We were waiting for Mr. Kelly to arrive and deal with that. Culturally, there's some things they're trying at the high school, but to set a firm policy. So that would come through as a kind of a standalone individual policy.
And we're trying to get that before the fall.
I have a suggestion on that issue. Could we vote that to him before he gets here?
Could we what?
Vote that to him before he gets here so it doesn't fall into a NEASC pattern where we're going to get to it next year, or we're going to get to it
No,
next
Oh,
we're
yeah,
year.
gonna-
no.
We're going to have it as policy before September.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I don't think he could avoid it if he tried. It's being discussed.
He's going to be coming to one of our next policy in a few months here to have that discussion. So how do you want to handle,
How do I, that's how you want to handle it. But I would say if we're going to take this to your next meeting.
okay,
So before the April meeting.
I want to know legally how we're supposed to handle it.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty minor edits. So you were going to be approving it as a second reading in April. So I'm just looking to my left at all the colored tabs. Are those,
Those are just like capitalization, where we have some things capitalized in one policy, not another. Just
can we just say you have a gift? Can we just say that? It's your spirit animal. So can I take that? Awesome. I appreciate that. I'm just kidding. So that's your, okay. So everything else is right here, so I can have that and, all right.
and if you want these, this tells you exactly what I had mentioned. give you this
Sure.
My PNN report is here, but I'll give you this after.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any? Oh,
I
Narissa.
have all mine if you want me to go through them. Or again, I mean, so I think a lot of mine are relative typos too. ADDA talks about quarries and then suddenly starts talking about CHRIs instead. I'm assuming that's a quarry typo because there's nothing in here I can find that would be abbreviated CHRI.
Actually, we have something that's. Didn't we have?
The policy again?
ADDA.
I'm sorry. There is something, because I thought we added that, because I said no one is going to know what that CHRI stands for.
I couldn't find anything in there where, often it'll have the
It might be-
capitalized title and then show the
It might
abbreviations
be
the
in a
first time.
different policy.
Check on that, but I'm remembering that conversation.
We had a lengthy conversation with Mike on that particular one.
I do not have tabs, so I'm going to be a little slower. Apologize.
Please take note of Dina, please.
I know. I'm working on it. I literally finished 20 minutes before I walked out the door, so this took a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
Is that one?
No, it's okay. I'm on to my next
Go
one.
ahead, you can continue.
DBD and DIE reference finance subcommittee, but we also there's a policy in there that says we have no standing subcommittees. So I'm not sure how that works. Yes, there is.
So we
Appropriately, it's the audits policy.
Yeah, no comment. So we've talked about this for a long time, that we don't have any standing committees. If you establish it as a standing committee, if you don't have it, you're violating policy.
Mm-hmm.
If you determine from time to time that you need, and we've said we need a finance committee, then you can have it. So currently we have the policy and advocacy subcommittee. You could change that to policy and, whatever you want, subcommittee. So I think that you could change that. Again, it's referencing it in a separate policy, so that's a little bit different.
Okay. So where it literally says working with the finance subcommittee and the school committee as a whole, the superintendent will have overall responsibility for advising on and coordinating budget preparation.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
As I recall, the last time I was involved with policy doing a big review, because we appoint members to the subcommittee every year, it expires when the new appointments come on, so it technically isn't a standing committee. That's what I was told. I don't know if
That's
that
what I was
passes
told as
muster
well.
or not, but maybe that's why that's written that way. I don't know, Narissa.
Just strikes me as odd that it's almost contradictory in the same policy manual.
Mhm.
So.
But I think you need to establish some type of financial entity that the school committee has, so I don't know what else you would put there.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I think at some point you're going to have to come to a consensus to either have subcommittees and reference them later, or omit these, or I just don't think you can not have subcommittees and then suddenly they're referenced through the budget section. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'll leave that to P&A to figure out.
Okay.
Because I don't have a direction to go on in it. I just think it needs to be resolved because right now it's an inconsistency.
Yeah, that was a topic when we were having this discussion as to what is the right thing to do to put in those type situations.
It was DBD, right?
DBD, yep, budget planning, and DIE audits.
And those both reference.
Can I make a suggestion? Whenever there's a reference in the policy to something like a finance committee, just put after it, in parens, as formed.
What was that?
As formed,
As formed.
in parens
Formed.
afterwards, that's all.
Well, that could be.
And that takes away the whole idea of a standing committee, I think. Anytime there's an actual subcommittee identified, just say as formed.
Yeah, that's. Thank you, Paul.
Spoken. I like that.
DGA references an assistant treasurer, and as far as I know, we don't have that position.
You could.
Frank
Yeah,
Chevaliardi.
years ago. Do you remember that, Deb?
Yes.
When
Frank Chevaliardi.
yes, Frank was our assistant treasurer. In fact, when I was chair, the bank had me sign something. So you should probably see if you should be on that instead.
Yes.
Okay, they already did that. Okay, so so you technically you would you would be in that role then. So it is valid.
So that policy says the school committee shall appoint an assistant treasurer by name. So I would either suggest we need to modify our procedures then, or modify this policy.
Procedures, yeah. You don't want to change the policy.
So that's a note for down the road. Maureen has one, so I'll let her go while I'm searching for my next one.
I had a couple questions mainly. Under section EEAG, student transportation and private vehicles. The question really is, I know this year we have two of those new, I don't know what you call them, vans, buses. Do those fall under the, what did I say, EEAG? The private vehicles, because they're not technically part of our buses?
No, because it's not private. It's a district vehicle. We're just not providing what's the term? We're not transporting home to school, so it's not home transportation, but it's a district vehicle, so they're covered under our policies, right? Yeah.
Okay. And then, did you find what you had?
I've
two
got a
more.
bunch lined up.
I've got,
Before it.
I'll get two more. I'll finish mine. Mine are quick. Under section K, KBE, relations with parent booster organizations. I just had a question on the second section. It talks about how all parent organizations shall obtain a 501c3 status. Not all booster organizations do that. So do you need to specify there that it's PTA, PTOs?
They should, right? So I think you were part of that discussion. They cannot borrow our tax status.
ID, right.
So it's either some individual putting money in their own private account, or they're setting up their own status. So we're actually, I know there's been
Even
some
for
discussion.
boosters?
Anyone. So if it's not district liability, it's personal liability. So if, parents think that, I just happen to be the keeper of the checkbook for the boosters this year, it's in someone's tax ID because it can't be in the districts. And there have been some that were in the districts, and we've cleaned that up.
No, right now they're still with the district. We're in the
There's-
process of cleaning that up.
Okay, there it is.
But there is booster money that's still held in the district, correct?
Yes, it will be dispersed as of the end of the fiscal year. We've been written up in our audit report for that. So it will go away and back to the individual booster groups, or it needs to be spent down.
Okay. Is that new? Because I know we talked in the fall about.
We did talk, and
the
then during
sports.
the audit, more and more came about.
Okay.
And then they actually went to DESE and asked them for guidance.
Okay.
And DESE's, and the wording that came back to me was get rid of it ASAP. And I said, well, can you give me to the end of the year?
So is that being communicated to the sports boosters?
Will be. Hasn't yet.
I don't know if Sean has begun that process,
Wow,
but we've
okay.
had meetings with Sean so far.
Okay.
Yes.
So you as the finance subcommittee, not a standing finance subcommittee, but you as the finance committee need to see that report first. So
Yes,
that audit
that's
report
the
will come to
next
you, and
meeting.
that's,
Yeah,
that's still
okay.
all the work in progress.
Okay. Okay. Then just lastly, the same section KI, the visitors to schools, it just talks about coming in and signing in, like physically signing in. We have a new system this year. Does it need to be referenced in here that it's the Raptor system? Is that what the name of it is, Raptor system?
The guidance on that was not to specify any system because at any point we could change it.
Okay.
So you're saying it says
It just says, for security purposes, it is required that all visitors report to the principal's office upon entering and leaving the building and sign a guest log.
Yeah, I mean, so we're
Don't
doing that,
sign
we're doing
a
that
guest log.
digitally. So I
Right.
would say, no, we don't want to name a system.
Okay.
We have a guest log, and
Okay.
currently that's Raptor.
Yep. Okay. That's all I had.
All right. GBGE. Mm-hmm. On the very last page of that policy, it has a note that the school committee should seek the advice of council, deliberate, and determine whether or not to change the following language in the first paragraph, as the school committee, in consultation with the superintendent, may choose to, 1, make this type of leave paid or unpaid, and 2, make an employee exhaust other leave options or not. And I don't believe we've had that conversation. Okay. On 1H or IH, sorry, IHBG, it references an achievement test battery. I wasn't sure what that was and if the timing that's in there is correct. I was thinking from reading it that it might be MCAS, but the timing doesn't match up, so. IHBG.
Schooling?
Yeah.
So there's multiple, Kim's going to check, there's multiple
Okay.
ways that they can complete the assessments. They do not complete MCAS.
Okay.
Right? Homeschoolers do not complete MCAS. So
Okay.
there's several approved curricula and assessments that we will take.
Should there be a time reference then? I think it says like March or something like that.
I think it's towards the end of the year, right? I think that's why they were referencing March or something.
No, that's fine. So you said the reference of a test battery?
Yeah, it says, what I wrote down was an achievement test battery, but I'm not finding it in that. Maybe I noted it next to the wrong one.
And again, we're on IHBG,
Thought it was.
homeschooling, or IHBGR maybe?
Maybe IHBGR. Yes, it's IHBGR number 3. It's the annual achievement test battery, which is usually administered in February or March of each school year. Maybe that stays, but the time frame goes. I don't know. JCA. References permitting secondary school students to take courses not offered in their assigned schools. Is that early college, or it's under assignment of students to schools? It says generally students would be required to attend school in the community in which they reside unless the superintendent has granted special permission. Special permission may be granted for the following reasons, and one of the reasons is to permit secondary school students to take courses not offered in their assigned schools.
I'm sorry, the policy.
JCA. Just seemed weird. I was wondering if it was for a district with multiple secondary schools where maybe a student could take a course that wasn't offered in their secondary school, and then maybe this was just a blanket policy that got assigned to us.
Is that the Salem State dual enrollment thing?
I don't know.
Say-
That's what I was.
Yeah, it could be any dual enrollment, any
Okay.
course that isn't, any online really, any distance learning.
Okay.
You'd want that to cover. Yeah, with Middlebury College. Yep. Yeah, we did years 3 and 4 of Mandarin. We did through Middlebury. Yeah.
That policy also says if the legal residence of a child changes from one community to another during the school year and the parents wish the child to remain in his former school, that's one of the other reasons given, and it says permission will not extend beyond the current school year. But then when I go look at JF, it says if a family moves from one town in the district to another town in the district, a student may continue to attend their current school, period.
JF, what section of JF?
It's section 4M, and then 4N goes on to say, which was a separate question. Once admitted to school outside the town of residence, a student shall not have the right to return to his or her local school during the school year in question, which I wasn't aware was legal. That seems to say to me, like, if a student choice to another district, we could tell them they can't come back here during the school year. Is that law?
I think that's referencing I think that's meaning within the district.
The first one means within the district.
I think the second one is referencing the same.
Oh.
Outside the town of residence, it's not saying,
okay.
that's all speaking to
Okay.
within.
Okay.
And that would be the case. So in a given year, they can and need to remain
Yep.
in the existing school. And
Okay.
can't just say, I want to go back now, because that can mess things up. So M and N. Okay.
Okay. JH, I'm assuming this is the outside parameters on this, but it says each principal, this is about student absences, each principal, by whatever title they may be known, will notify a student's parent guardian within 3 days of the student's absence in event the parent guardian has not informed the school of the absence. Certainly hope if a child doesn't show up to school that we're notifying them sooner than 3 days later.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Usually happens within minutes, but yes.
All right.
That's statutory requirement, yes.
Yeah. I had the question on that same student publications one, but I actually thought that shouldn't be included. So I don't know, maybe that's something we can.
But it should not be included?
Yeah, the student publications clause on there. It just seemed, I don't know. How would somebody assume that the student voice is making policy for the district? That's where I guess I'm confused. It seemed like an over-legalization of what's happening.
These are policies. These are over-legalized.
All
They're
right.
oversimplified and over-legalized. That's the purpose. I mean, it's purely protection.
Okay.
You know, the way we function on a day-to-day basis is far more nurturing and warm than if you read through the policy manual. At least I hope. I'm very confident.
JLCD-R
JL.
has the old trsd.net address in it.
Which one is that?
Yeah, it's medical administration. KBE just has a strike through in it that wasn't actually removed. It's a short one.
KDE.
KBE. KF is about use of facilities regulations, and it references a signed agreement, but it doesn't seem to providing a copy of the agreement once it's signed, but it doesn't seem to reference that anywhere else in there. So I'm not sure what the agreement pertains to. I would assume is it liabilities or something like that?
So it's now all done electronically online.
Okay.
So when you submit through, what's it called, ML schedules, it's then submitted, you agree, provide insurance information, agree to all the restrictions. And
Okay. Maybe that can be referenced elsewhere, because it just, that signed agreement kind of pops out of nowhere. F. Yeah, it says the building principal shall communicate his or her decision to the appropriate parties by providing a copy of the signed agreement.
which they do. It's electronic after they approve it.
Yeah. It just doesn't reference that anywhere above, so you don't actually know what that agreement is agreeing to, which I think is the crux of my question. And I think that is, yep, that's it.
Okay, does anybody have any other?
Anybody else want to load work on Linda?
Okay. I appreciate everybody going through them. I know it's a tough thing to go through and try and figure out the legislatures. So I'd like to, we don't have to approve anything, correct?
We need to, approve the revised Triton District Policy Manual as a first reading.
I'll make a motion to approve the policies as a first reading.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, you've got a unanimous approval.
Okay, and the advocacy part of it, we had a meeting today, before the meeting, and we have somewhere. I do. So we would like to, Narissa has drafted another letter to our legislators, but not only do we want, are we just having the chairs sign it, or everyone signing it again?
That was where we kind of left it open. So in January, when I had sent the Promise Act letter that we all signed together, they had said, are you going to follow up with something about the budget and the other legislation that's out there? And would it be something that we could send on to other legislators? So it goes to them and they could send it on elsewhere if they needed to. And I said, yeah, we'll get to that at some point. So that's drafted. And I provided it to Policy and Advocacy now that they're kind of back on advocacy with the policy manual work done, or mostly done. And the question was, when that goes out, I mean, I think it would be powerful to ask our towns if they would participate in signing it along with us or send a similar statement at the same time. So the question was, is that something we want to pursue? And if so, to what level?
Right, and the advocacy committee decided that it would be good for the chair to sign it, as well as the chairs of the selectmen to sign it, so that it's a much powerful documents that our towns and the school committee are submitting it together.
Yeah, Deb?
Did you mean that all of the selectmen and the chair of the school committee would all sign one letter, or they all send their own?
No, that they would sign one letter together.
Right. So we can do one letter together, or if they're more comfortable with kind of phrasing it from their own perspective, because this is clearly a district perspective. I mean, I could see potentially Salisbury wanting to add in their own.
Right. I understand that we want to be unified. Yep. On the other hand, I think it will get more attention if we send it, if they send, and each of the 4 entities sends a letter. And if they want to tweak it, they can. But if they don't have to. But I personally think 4 letters would be better than one with 4 signatures.
Okay, that sounds great. And do we all want to sign this one, or do we want to just have me sign it and sign it for the committee?
I think if this is going to come from us, it should be from all of us.
I agree. I mean, the last one we sent, we all signed, so I think to be consistent, we should all sign this one.
Okay. We can put it on letterhead and leave it in the office. Does that work? All right, sounds good. And I will send a letter to the other chairs with a copy of that as exists. We can always amend it if anyone has any comments or wants any changes made on it. I know we have a few copies here from the P&A meeting. I didn't make enough for the entire committee, unfortunately. But I can also send it out electronically. And I'll ask them if they want to tweak or what they want to do, and we can work with them at that point to get that done.
And Narissa has also supplied the committee a list of 114 districts that have similar FBRC amounts that they're going to get, like we are. We're not going to get very much money from these. So we're going to take some of this that Narissa has put and put our own letter together and start calling and emailing those 114 school districts to try and get them to come on board and talk to their legislators as well. I also want to say that I'm glad that we have Julie Romano, she's a great resource to have. And Brian, at some point, we need to have her come to meet the whole committee. I don't know if you've set anything up with Julie. She came to our policy committee, but she did not come to the full committee.
She came here.
She hasn't come here.
She hasn't come here. Okay. Oh.
So can you please set that up?
Absolutely.
I think we had agreed that we would set it up after all the budget things were set. So the policy committee had sat with her about different things, being the Salisbury pen pal and getting the Newbury pen pal set up. We're also talked to Julie about Newbury does a great job with the card writing for Christmas and for the Valentine's Day. So we're gonna come in the fall, start having the schools, the other two schools, send cards to our seniors. Anything that we've asked Julie to do, Julie has taken it and has run with it. And she's come up with other ideas herself. So we're kind of taking a step back from the community part of advocating with the seniors and the schools, because Julie, I think, is inundating them enough with what they're doing to engage our seniors. And I'm very proud of the Student of the Month that the school committee's launched, and I think it'll be a great tradition going on. But the policy committee advocacy is going to be working harder with Narissa to take on a lot of the state, trying to get on board with that. Do either of you have anything? No? Okay, I'm done talking.
All right. Personnel and negotiations. Dina? Oh, here you go.
Thank you. We have reviewed the contracts for the superintendent and the district treasurer, which we'll be talking about tonight in executive session. We are continuing to meet with the PEC. We actually have our next meeting with them tomorrow afternoon. We'll give you an update on that tonight as well. I do want to alert the committee that due to the work that P&N has been doing with the PEC, we have not yet addressed the issue that Paul had raised about AP classes and reviewing the evaluation process of the superintendent. I don't think that the review of the superintendent's evaluation will be done before next month when we start all of that again. We've been really busy. And just as a reminder to the committee that we decided, the P&N subcommittee at our meeting in January decided that we didn't think there was anything that we needed to change as far as the school committee evaluation. So that's where we stand.
All right. Finance subcommittee, Deb? He's been waiting for this moment.
Well, we have voted a final budget, and that's pretty much what we've been doing for the last several meetings. So based on what Michelle said earlier, we have some new issues to start talking about at our meeting next week. And you also have the letter confirming our excess and deficiency amount. I don't know if
Yeah, no, we have our certified excess and deficiency, which is our, in a city or town, it's called free cash balance as of June 30th. It was certified by the Department of Revenue. They actually changed up their process a little bit this year to try to streamline it, I guess, from all regional schools. They said they got a different format for every single school district. So it was extremely difficult, but once we worked through the tweaks and the actual information that they were requesting, the process was actually really easy. Actually, it was referred to at a conference that I was at today. MJ Handy was there with Rob O'Donnell, and they talked about how the process was so much easier on their end between the 351 cities and towns and I don't remember how many regional school districts there are, 58. And it is a requirement of school districts. One thing I learned today, which I did not realize, it is not required of a city or town to have free cash certified. It is only a requirement of regional schools. Most cities and towns do it, but it is not required by law. I thought that was really interesting, something I actually learned. So we are required to have ours. certified, and it automatically also is sent to each of our member towns, so that we're not hiding anything. Our certification is well under our limit of what we would have to reinvest and return to the towns. So our figure for the current year is $464,942. Any questions?
Paul?
And can you just put that in context for us, Michelle? So there's recommendations about what a school district should have, percentage-wise, I think?
I don't know if there's anything official out there. I think it's usually between 3 and 5%.
Okay, and so where
Anything
would
over
that,
5% would have to be returned to the towns.
okay, so 5% of, is it 42 million?
Yes.
So over $2 million.
Yeah, close to $2 million.
So the auditor's recommendation is consistently 3%.
Right.
And we're far below that.
Oh, yes. We're less than
Okay.
0.5%, yeah.
We would love to have that problem,
Yes.
returning money to towns.
All right. Do you want to make the motion?
Yes, could we have a motion to receive and file Triton's FY18 excess and deficiency certification?
So moved.
Any discussion? Oh,
I guess I don't know.
oh, you're second. That's right. You moved. You second. Okay. I'm with you. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. It's unanimous. In the correspondence section of your packet, you'll find the confirmation to Whittier that we appointed or reappointed Alana Gilbert and David Irving to the school committee seats that they had previously held. The invitation from the Salisbury Warrant Advisory Committee to the superintendent and the Salisbury School Committee members to attend their meeting on the 27th. And I'll leave this one to Brian.
Oh, is that from
It's
the
the
district attorney?
yes.
So there is a copy of that? We didn't, it's a full color report of all the work that District Attorney Blodgett has done. We're very happy to be partnering with them, CCI meetings on a monthly basis here in the school. So it's certainly a good relationship. We have an active MOU. And if you're interested in seeing a copy, there's a copy there to review, and we can provide a copy if you'd like it. And can I say one more thing that's not on the agenda? So I forgot to mention this as I was presenting the budget. So Patty and I have been talking about this for a long time, and we finally remembered to talk about it at the moment when it made sense to make copies. So in front of you, you have a copy of the year fiscal 2000 budget. So in 2000, this was the entirety of the budget that was approved. So literally, there was no additional narrative. So there's lots of pieces that you won't even find in here, such as the breakdown of the calculation of the percentages for each town. If there is ever anyone that doesn't believe that we have a transparent and clear process that provides lots of information, have that handy and show them how we've progressed in 2 decades since 2000 to 2020. That is all.
Also in the correspondence, there's a thank you from the Pettingill House for their donation of toiletry items. I believe this was the middle school drive. I believe they did toiletries from.
That was a letter from us, right? No, that was our office. So
Oh,
that was our
office?
district
Okay.
office. Yep.
Well done,
So
central
we did
office.
that in lieu of gifts at the holidays, and I dropped them off. It was a lot. We ended up with boxes and boxes and boxes. So it was, as they're always very appreciative, and it's always. I was driving away. I emailed everyone and just said, I wish everyone could be part of that when I actually deliver it, because the look of appreciation, and it's such a small token for us to give, to go by, fill up a box at BJ's, but the appreciation is so immense. So it's, we all love it. I'm speaking for everyone in the district office that loves to participate in that. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy for contract negotiations for both union and non-union personnel, not to return to open session.
So moved.
And I need a roll call vote for us to go in. Paul?
Yes.
Tina? Linda?
Yes.
Paul G?
Yes.
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 Yes. And
Yes.
all right. Thank you all.